Well, hi, Liz. Thank you for being with me today. I'm very excited to chat with you. I think the first time I saw you on Instagram as, at the Poop Queen, I was like, she is somebody that I need to talk to. So I really appreciate you being here and, the conversation that we're going to have today.
Absolutely. And I am also very thankful for it because this will land very well with, I think, my audience too. We've not talked about this topic in
Yeah.
depth on my show. So we will have to do that at some point because it is something I do get asked about very, very frequently. And it
Yeah.
was really fun to even just email with you back and forth and then dive into the research. I always like to look at what that says and then I'll give you a little bit more on the clinical side, what we see too.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think that there's so many, and I feel like I say this all the time, so I sound like a broken record, but there's so many different pieces to, just gut issues as a whole. And then you get even more, you get into a smaller subset of people with gastroparesis or, just the motility disorders. And you don't realize how many different pieces go into that spectrum. And, we know that gastroparesis is just the stomach, but we also know that people with gastroparesis don't tend to only have motility issues in the stomach. And I think that those wires get crossed, some things get missed, and it makes it really hard to figure out, what's wrong with you, where in your gut is something wrong? Is it the top? Is it the bottom? Is it affecting in another part of the body? And it's just really difficult. So I think these conversations are just that much more important to really dive into what does that mean and make it more understandable for our group of people.
Yeah, let me ask you this. I'd be curious from your experience working with GI doctors. What was their solution? Like, what was their answer when you went through like all the testing? Like, okay, you have gastroparesis. What did that mean to you? What did they offer you in terms of solutions?
I'm still waiting for that answer. No, but I think I've had some really good GI doctors and I've had some not so great doctors. I had one who's actually on our medical board that after I had gone through all the other medications, I'd been on TPN, I'd been on tube feeds, I had to ask for a dietitian. I was not offered or suggested to speak to a dietitian. So when I had gone through everything and all of that wasn't working, we talked about the G poem. And he is very good at doing that. I am one of his success stories coming out of that. So that was really helpful for me. But outside of him, I didn't really get offered very much. And I also didn't know what questions to ask in order to kind of facilitate more communication, more options, or even just say, like, this is not working. What do I do? So it was very difficult. And like I said, still waiting, still even now, waiting for somebody to be like, this is what gastroparesis is. This is what this means. And this is what we can or cannot do for you. I don't think I ever actually had that conversation with anyone.
Yeah, in conventional medicine, I always tell people they're working within the tools that they have, right, in their
Mhm,
scope of the things that they were taught. And in functional medicine, it's just much different because we're looking at things in more of a holistic manner. And so,
mhm,
even with the research articles that I shared with you, we'll discuss a bit today and then we'll put in the show notes. Yeah, it's there and they're studying it actively and we can see some of the what we would call, I would say, root cause contributors,
mhm.
to this, but are we actually going deeper in conventional medicine in the way that we should? And I think the answer is no, because if you
Yeah.
actually look at the stats for gastroparesis, true gastroparesis, it's like 1 to 2% of people.
Mhm.
It's labeled kinda like IBS gets labeled a lot, which we could
Yeah.
talk about well for individuals that they just kind of have done some testing, don't really know, but this seems like what it could be, so that's what we're gonna kind of, like, label it, essentially.
Mhm,
Because in functional medicine, when we look at this, we actually look at this more as a gut-brain coordination disorder, and so we have to
mhm.
really think about our nervous system as a big player here and what the communication is. Of course, there are
Absolutely.
the fundamental things, right? Like even what you had done
Mhm.
to sphincters and everything, but when we have this impaired vagal tone that imbalances or weakens some of these gastric, what we call pacemakers, to get
Mhm.
the signaling for your muscle contraction and keep things, moving. The big question that I would always ask is, has there been a trauma? Has there been an illness?
Mhm.
Has there been something ongoing that is then impairing the vagal tone, right? So within
Mhm.
this could be emotional trauma, it could be a physical trauma, a car accident, a traumatic brain injury, or a concussion. Like there could be so many things. And
Yeah.
from what I understand, for most people that have been diagnosed with this, that's not usually a conversation to talk
Nope.
about the nervous system and the gut brain connection.
Yeah, and I think that in all the conversations I've had and just more research that I see and more people like yourself that are talking about this is when a patient hears like gut brain connection, immediately because of history and how things are talked about sometimes in the doctor's offices, we might think that you're telling us as a provider that this is in our head. And it just shows that there's such a disconnect in the conversation, the communication, and the research, And when I've talked to experts and just talking to people about more research that's happening, like I understand what they're telling me. I hear it because I live this literally and in working with people and having these conversations. The average patient is not doing or having the conversations that I'm having. So it's even more important from our perspective to really try to say, like, this is what that means. This is where that connection is. This could be a missing piece. Maybe not for everybody, but for some people. And it's been really wonderful in more conversations I've had in the last couple months where I see physicians and experts who are more in that conventional space starting to open up and understand like we don't have all the answers here, or maybe there are other factors at play that are really causing this thing that we don't understand. Even for myself, I'll go into the office and I'm like, look, I've been on every medication, I've been on tube feeds, I've had all the procedures, I've had all these things done. What do I do? Okay, come back in 6 months. Like, "Thank you, that was really
Well,
helpful." Like, "What do I do?" And I'm like, "There can't be no answer. I'd rather you tell me, 'I'm not sure. Let me look into this,' or 'Let's think about it,' or 'Come back to this.'" Anything other than like, "Cool, thanks," and now I'm back to figuring this out on my own. And that's where seeing the research and knowing things are happening are great. But again, if you don't understand them, like you were saying before, these articles are full of so much information that it can almost be overwhelming to even understand, like, what the heck is this trying to say to me right now?
well, and like you said, so for let me go back and kind of clarify here. When we say gut brain connection, it's literally more on the side of what's happening that is nothing to do with you in
Hmm.
your head thinking that it's, a me issue. I was actually just on
Yeah.
another podcast and I was like, you will not manifest your way out of being chronically constipated. That is not going to happen.
I
Is it
wish.
is it important to have a healing mindset? Yeah, but also
Hmm.
PTSD from these things is very real and it is traumatic
Hmm.
for people and things like that. So more on the side of like the signaling through the vagus nerve and what's going on that is just autonomic and happening without you actually doing or thinking about something.
Yeah.
And then think about gastroparesis, for me as a whole, I always want to go back and ask the question, why? What
Hmm.
is impairing the signaling? What microbes might be off that are driving inflammation that's
Hmm.
impairing the signaling, and then thinking that is more than just the stomach. So one of the articles that, I had sent you and we kind of can dive in here is looking at how does this slow not just the stomach transit time, but more the small intestine and the colon
Yeah.
because everything is a north to south process. So kind of going from
Hmm.
that brain, connection to signaling all the different things that have to happen with all the different digestive organs. But in some of the research articles, just to kind of quickly summarize this, in a study of 338 patients with gastroparesis symptoms, they saw one third having that severe constipation
Yep.
and 32% of those had objectively delayed colonic transit time from the wireless motility testing. So there's even like
Hmm.
different things you can swallow now, the little cameras and go through. And so we
Yeah.
have to think about this beyond just the stomach because gastroparesis describes where the delay is measured in the stomach, But the gut brain dysfunction describes more of the why behind why that's happening in terms of, again, that neuroenteric signaling. And then the
Mhm.
pan gut dysmotility describes how widespread it is. So
Yeah.
again, gastroparesis, but like, what does that mean? Because I can't freaking poo. And that's causing a lot of upstream issues, making this worse. And
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I think I said this in maybe like the first or second episode that we recorded, that my mom jokingly has said, she's like, "You were never a good pooper. Like back to your baby, like when you were a baby, you have never been a good pooper." And even now, adding all this other dysmotility, all these other issues, like while yes, my stomach and the slow motility is a big problem for me, the constipation is probably one of the biggest problems that I actually do deal with. And like you said, that goes upstream. Once you've clogged down here, nothing else is going to work. And it's going to work even worse. So if you're not addressing that, like you said, you're not addressing any of the problem, because you can't fix up here if you're not fixing down here, or at the bare minimum, even addressing that the constipation or the slow motility in the large intestines anything that's causing constipation issues. If you're not addressing that, then you're not actually going to do anything to help the problem. You might put a band-aid on it, which I think is what a lot of us start to deal with, where it's like, we'll take laxatives. And I see that in the group all the time, where people are talking about, I haven't pooped for a week. I'm really full. I can't eat anything. My stomach is so much worse. What do I do? My doctor told me to take Miralax. I'm not going to say don't follow your doctor's advice, but that's not the only solution that's out there. That's not the only thing that you can do, should do. And that's where my frustration comes with, if you don't know what questions to ask, to say, well, are there other options? Are there other things I could take? Maybe you want to do something more natural to take for yourself that's more comfortable, or that your stomach would tolerate even more. And it's like, there's just such a disconnect in here, where I see these questions happening and I'm just like, oh my goodness, we have so much work to do. And it all comes down to pooping.
Yeah, and it's informed consent, it's advocating for yourself, and it's understanding to how to try to navigate this. So this might be a good place to say, I've been there. I've been
Mhm.
to, I was chronically constipated for 8 years, multiple doctors that just basically said, drink water, take, Miralax and eat more fiber, had a
Mhm.
colonoscopy when I was 20. If I could go back to some of those conversations, a couple of things that I would do is, number one, say, I've done all that. What are the other tools that you have? What other tests can be done? Can you refer me to
Mhm.
endocrinology? Let's check my thyroid. It came down to Hashimoto's for me. Yes,
Mhm.
I did have a lot of dysbiosis in my gut. I had a parasite, candida, all of the things that needed to be rebalanced. And that's a huge piece of this, I believe, as well, which we can talk about. But
Yeah.
in those moments that you feel you're being gaslit,
Mhm.
you don't have much time with them, right? And so
Mhm.
if you are requesting further investigation and they deny it, you can simply say, please document that you're denying my medical request, because it
That's a
is a medical.
great suggestion, really. I never
Yeah.
thought about that.
I want to see why won't you try to help me? Because if this is the best tool that you have, I mean, I know what Miralax does. Not only today do I talk about that it's toxic to the body, but it's so harsh on the body. I lived that for
Yeah.
years in terms of, oh my God, my stomach is killing me. I am cramping so bad. I'm in that like hot, cold sweat, and I don't know if I'm going to make it to the bathroom because it
Yeah.
hits wrong times all the time, you know?
Yep.
So, okay, that's harsh to the body. That's not a way to live. It's not a long term solution. And it's also, just something that can be driving other things worse. So, if you actually look at the
Mhm.
literature research and the lawsuits around Miralax, long-term use, it's not designed for, but it can throw off, the bacteria in the microbiome. We know a lot of our immune
Mhm.
system thrives in the microbiome. It's not doing that in a good way, and then that further
Yeah.
drives inflammation, which again can then be, is this a negative feedback loop, right? In in terms of the gastroparesis and the upstream issues. That we have to consider. But if you have a doctor who could actually sit and listen with you, what I would look them dead in the face and say is, "If I were in your shoes, would you accept this as an answer?"
That's a good one.
It's just an honest
Yeah.
human, not, degrading to them. It's not that you are saying that they are not good at their job or things, but it is a true, because I've asked this to pediatricians before.
Mhm.
And I said, "Hey, can I level with you like mom to mom here? If this was your child, would you be choosing that therapy?"
Yeah.
Then it allows maybe a little bit more of a human connection. And so those 2 things could be tips for you. They might not always work. And then I would also say, fire your doctor if you don't feel like they're listening to you and they're not helping you and kind of helping advocate. But I know that's completely off topic of what we have for
It's
today.
so important though. Like those are really, really good tips, especially with everything that, we are talking about and have talked about. Like if you're in that position where you're like, I don't know what to do here. I feel unhappy. Those are two incredibly good tips to maybe foster a little bit more communication, or at the very least, give you the opportunity to get yourself into a new doctor or a new situation, or just to say this isn't working for me and, this is my next question. I want you to document that. Like I never thought of that because we now that we can see our medical records, you can see the notes in there. It's good to have that reflected in there. So that's really important.
Yeah,
Really
and if you're
important.
I wanna say this too, because I definitely get the white coat syndrome. When I was pregnant, just, my son's 13 months and I have a 6-year-old too, but in my last pregnancy, there'd be things that I wanted to talk with her about. Actually, it was like a pretty intense conversation because I was telling her some things about her business partner in the practice that I strongly felt she needed to know, and the way that I addressed it, she actually thanked me later. But what I did is I also wrote things down in the notes section on my phone,
Mm.
because I'll be honest, I probably would have just gone blank slate and forgot, because, yeah, you do
Yeah.
have a bit of that, like, they're the doctor, they're in the white coat, I'm inferior here, even though I'm very knowledgeable and this is my body, I have to advocate for myself, I have to advocate for other women who are getting treated crappy by this other woman in this practice. And so I'm just a strong person and felt like I should really tell her, because if it was my practice, I'd want to know. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I have to sandwich it in with, kindness and other words. So I had to put it in my notes. And so if you are like, oh my God, I'm so nervous, I don't know if I could say that or I forgot, just make a little note on your notepad, have that in your hand, look at it before they come in, have it up, remind yourself if they are in there, and you can do it. Because again, a lot of us get that nervous in the moment and then maybe don't stand up for herself, and then later you're
Yeah.
like, "I said this," because you
Yeah.
don't go at it rude way either. You wanna go at it as more of a collaborative way,
Mhm.
and then you can get further with that. I just know that so many people are gaslit the way that I was, and I want them to have those tools
Yeah.
or ideas because I didn't, you know?
Yeah, and that's a lot of what I'm hoping comes out of every one of these conversations that we have too, is that if there's something that we say today that you feel is helpful to you or you want to learn more, you want to bring up to your doctor. Like we also want to give you those tools to feel comfortable to bring that up because we've all been in that position. No matter how smart you are, no matter how confident you are, no matter how good of an advocate for yourself you are, we all can shut down. So if we can help give you information, articles, any suggestion to, help you be more successful in that relationship and in those moments, we're helping you be successful outside of those moments too, to feel more comfortable trying a new food, maybe being more comfortable trying a new protocol, a new medication, a procedure, a treatment, whatever that is. It's making you find what's best to work for you based on, everything that you have at your disposal. So the more we can give people, the better. And it's just it's hopeful. It's hopeful for me coming because I've learned so much in these conversations where I'm like, "Okay, I've got this today." Somebody remind me, take a big deep breath, like, before you're gonna, say anything, like, ground yourself, center yourself, and, like, I find myself doing that more now that like, okay, before I go do this, this is what I'm going to do. And that's what helps me move forward. But you don't learn that anywhere until you need to learn that somewhere. And someone just reminds you, like, don't hold it all in. Take a deep breath and relax everything. Like you were talking about the nervous system, your body, and everything. Like if you're holding tight constantly in that fight or flight mode, things are not you're not setting yourself up for success. It might not be like you said before, you can't manifest yourself into not being constipated, but having a healing mindset can help put you in a more,
Yeah.
moving
A lot of
situation.
that is around, like, if we would say creating safety in the body, and that's really
Mhm.
what I think the nervous system needs to be about, and I tell you, so we have a podcast, and we've had almost 1,000 episodes, and many of those, interviews. Becca and I, my co-host and my business partner, always talk to each other about, like, God, if we get another interview of people saying just to deep breathe and walk in nature, like, God, we're gonna throw up, because the reality is that it's much deeper than this when we think about your nervous system, and if somebody tells me to meditate, that instantly puts me more into a stress state because I'm like, I already
Yes.
don't have time, for other things, and then I've tried
Yeah.
that and it just frustrates me. So, I think that when you're going through these situations, yes, the breath is huge, but more importantly, where we create safety is taking ownership and setting boundaries.
Mm.
So that could look like for someone who's struggling with a lot of GI issues, I don't rush myself. I am disciplined with maybe getting up a little bit earlier and having some time to be calm, to get maybe more of that
Mm.
stimulus to go to the bathroom in the morning, colon cleansing times 5 to 7 a.m. A big difference if you get up, you have some time, you have some warm lemon water and pinch of sea salt or some, potassium, whatever your AM routine might be, a little apple cider
Yeah.
vinegar. Those types of things, and maybe some red light therapy, some I love you massaging, some of those modalities that we can do to support. On the contrary, of getting up and it's like a fire drill and then your nervous system is just wrecked and you're rushing, and for some people they get more of like that urgent, but most
Yeah.
people lock up and they freeze. And so the setting boundaries is huge, and I think will go farther for people. That could also include, hey, I don't set calls on my calendar from 12 to 1 every day because I need that space for
Yeah.
me to sit down with my meal, to chew my food, to not be at my desk frantically shoving food in my mouth, writing an
Hmm.
email, and then maybe having a little bit of space there to go for a 5 to 10-minute walk. So those are things that I personally have found most helpful, in addition to like leaning into my faith, my devotion, those types
Yeah.
of things. Because again, all of these nervous system people say the same damn thing. And it's like, nobody has time to spend 6 hours a day taking a detox bath, doing their freaking vibration plate, doing their humming
Yeah.
and gargling and all this stuff. You got to find
Hmm.
what works great for you, because if you do and you're bought into it, you're already a step ahead because you're not resisting emotionally.
Yeah, I love that because we had I think it was our second episode of this year with James and Dahlia Marin, the co-founders of Married to Health. And in that episode we were talking about the small things that you can do for yourself that set yourself up for success. And one of them was like just talking about taking a breath, but not maybe frantically, like you said, eating at your computer, at your lunch break, at your desk, like just shoving it in because it's the only 10 minutes you have and then going back. And I'm like, oh gosh, you guys are calling me out like really bad right now. I'm like, why do I feel so terrible? And it's not like, yes, I have gastroparesis. Most food that goes in my stomach is going to cause some sort of upset, but I'm like, why is it so much worse? So I started to take the break and get up from my desk and go to the table and go eat in there and focus on chewing and just kind of letting everything relax. I'm like, "Oh, wow, my shoulders were in my ears," and everything else kind of calmed itself down. I'm like, I didn't realize I was doing that. And those are those small things that don't really add to your day. It's not adding a 20-step routine like we were just describing. It's not doing that. It's these smaller things that can help set you up for success. It's not going to cure you. It's not going to fix your motility, but it's not going to add to the issues. It's going to slowly help get you into a better place. So when you are doing new treatments or, just you are adding maybe a new routine, you're in a better place where your body can accept that because it's not so rigid and in a moment of urgency 24/7. I've been living that in the last year between my health and just trying to figure out life. And when I realized in talking about that, I was like sitting here like, oh gosh, like Okay, I have a lot of work to do after this, and it was
Many
really
of us
helpful.
many of us do, and I am always transparent to say I'm not here to throw stones, at a glass house
Mhm.
because this is something that takes intention. And
Yeah.
I for sure still have times. I just posted about this. I made a reel about it a few weeks back. We were traveling and I ran out of time to have breakfast before we went down to the conference. And so I was walking to the conference eating my rice cake and peanut butter and banana. And this guy totally called me out. And I was like, you know what? Thanks for calling me out because I needed that reminder. You know, we just get in the hustle and bustle and the to dos, and
Mhm.
we're working with clients and we're doing this. And then I have two kids and I'm selling my home and moving. It's like all the things right now, and so my mind is scatterbrained. Oh,
Yeah.
I need to feed myself, And in certain seasons, like I have a 13-month-old, most nights he's driving me nuts while I'm also trying to feed myself. And so we're working through a routine of how do we, feed him, get him to bed, and then sit down and have a little, less uh, frustrating dinner. And so there is seasons, but it is just if we don't talk about it, we won't have any intention around it. And so even in
Yeah.
those moments where you can't maybe change it, what I've tried to do is be really then mindful of, okay, at least I can chew my food better. I can
Hmm.
set my food
Yeah.
down. I can think about other ways to try to help my digestion instead of just, I don't know if you have kids, how it goes, but everybody listening, if you have kids and you try to go out to eat and they're just a disaster, or you're at home and they're just a disaster, it's not enjoyable. And you're definitely, I've seen all those memes about the nervous system where like nobody knows the difference between a child screaming in your face and then like, something truly,
Like a bear
uh,
chasing you. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, I know we got to move on from that, but yeah, the nervous system is huge. I just like to tell people 'cause everybody says the same things over and over. Find what works for you, find what helps you get calm, bring joy to your life, however that happens. It's different for everyone, and I think that doing more of the fun things, maybe it's for me, I love cooking if I can, and I'll
Mhm.
listen to music, and I'll dance, or I'll watch comedy, or sit with my husband and play games. That to me goes a lot farther than trying to sit down and meditate.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, I truly couldn't agree more. Could not agree with that more. So, to I'll say pull us back on topic, though all very good things. One of the articles that you sent and one of the topics that we had wanted to discuss was about the liver and bile flow and fitting that in the connection to gut motility. And I found that so interesting, and I would love to kind of dive into that topic a little bit more because that's newer to me, so I don't have as much, experience or knowledge about that, and I think that could really be helpful.
yes. So I love talking about this. My plan is to write a book about bile and the gut liver immune connection because
Mhm.
I is overlooked so much. And in fact,
Yeah.
I did an Instagram live with a GI doctor who I respect. He's a great guy, but he mentioned on there that he doesn't believe in supporting the liver. And I was like, I would heavily disagree with you because one of the liver serves over 500 functions in the body. One of the very, very important roles is producing bile. And this is not a side player in motility.
Mhm.
So I'll give you the cliff notes and the real high level here. But for people with gastroparesis, you may also be struggling with dysbiosis or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth because, again, things are
Mhm.
moving slow and there's a lot of
Mhm.
fermentation, right? Bile is secreted by the liver and it is stored and concentrated in the gallbladder. That's your little reservoir, if you still have one. They take them out
Mhm.
so commonly. I think the stat I read yesterday was 1.2 million people will have their gallbladder removed this year.
Wow.
We can live without it, just like you can live without an appendix. But fun fact, an appendix actually a good reservoir for bacteria that are part of your immune system, and so they're like your defenses. So we just see
Interesting. Okay.
things to shift. I always say, like, if you have a symphony orchestra and you're missing your piano player, yeah, you might still be able to make music, but it's not going to sound as good as the piano player also being there helping support, right?
Yeah.
Or somebody is totally off tune, it's not going to sound as good. So when things start to get off from the way that we are designed, we have to shift. We have to rewrite the course. And so with bile specifically, It flows through your small intestine 15 times every time that you eat. And it's doing multiple things there. So, number one, it's helping you, most people know, break down your fats. And that's like, okay, whatever. I didn't break down my fats. Okay, maybe I'll take some vitamin D. No, no, no. So many other things happen because of bile being a signaler. So, it activates different receptors. Many of them are very, very important for duodenal signaling. Okay. And so, are we opening and closing our bowels at the right time for peristalsis, for this movement, the motor migrating complex? So, in the small intestine, think of this as your built in antimicrobial and your built in laxative. It should help kick bacteria out and neutralize it. And it should also help stimulate motilin, which is your motility hormone. These are
Mhm.
just a few things. There's so many things. But when we are struggling with leaky gut or dysbiosis, right? Overgrowth of weeds compared to flowers, that creates inflammation. Inflammation allows things to become leaky and seep into the bloodstream. In the medical literature, we look at this now as intestinal permeability. Layman's terms, we call it leaky gut. Okay, things
Mhm.
are leaking out of the lumen into the bloodstream. So that goes back in line into the liver, and the liver says, okay, now I have more toxins, more what we call lipopolysaccharides, endotoxins that I have to now detoxify. But some of them come from these different bacteria that are very dangerous. And so it starts to create inflammation in the liver to protect itself. That's the liver. Liver is our only organ that can, regenerate itself, but it has to protect itself. And so when it creates inflammation, it also downregulates bile. Then you factor in hormones and estrogen. She's a wild, crazy one. Okay. Bile needs to bind to toxins. It needs to bind to cholesterol and sequester things. It needs to help eliminate hormones that have been metabolized. And so, for women especially, we go through different seasons of our life where we take these huge shifts with hormones, pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, postmenopause. All that impacts our bile. And then you have to further upstream think about all the things that are not getting signaled appropriately from the brain, the thyroid, stomach acid, pancreas. So it becomes a very intricate web. And
Mhm.
again, many GI doctors just look at, okay, I scoped you, no issues here. All right, you have gastroparesis, take some laxative, let's move on. But they don't ever think about the impact of not having adequate bile, so the right amount at the right time. If bile becomes sluggish, if it becomes insufficient, we start to then see a lot of problems. So that can look like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, constipation. It can look like estrogen dominance. It can look like skin issues, high cholesterol, all these things, metabolic issues, weight loss resistance, insulin resistance, brain fog, fatigue, joint
Mhm.
pain, autoimmune. So it's all very, very intraconnected. And so when you don't have that, your stool becomes harder and harder to move. Well, if you're constipated, and I know this is one thing that we had in our notes to talk about today, what's happening then upstream? My nausea
Mhm.
is getting worse, my pain's getting worse, I'm not feeling well, maybe I'm burping, right? I'm again, just feeling like food is sitting in my stomach. I'm cramping. So we really have to look at that because it's going to play three crucial roles: mechanical lubrication, chemical signaling, and then that neural hormonal feedback loop. Because again, if you have estrogen that's off, that is going to make it even worse because it's
Yeah.
more peanut butter sluggish like. And then you're just building up that estrogen, and estrogen dominance can set a whole fire in the body that many women experience. It's the top hormonal, dysregulation.
Yeah, I was, like, just so zoned in on everything that you just said because I am sitting here like, again, "Huh, interesting. Why has nobody ever talked about this before? Why has this never been a conversation where when at the surface level, like, I just recently had blood work, right? And it all came back, like, normal for the first time in a long time, and I wanted to be happy. Truly, I wanted to be happy that everything looks good, but I feel terrible. And it's one of those things where these are the conversations where you're looking at it like, everything looks fine, or you've had a scope and everything like, just take a little bit of this for some gastritis, or, we already know you have gastroparesis, you already have these issues. Everything came back fine. I don't really know what to tell you. Did you look everywhere? Did you ask the right questions? Like I had a provider years ago, and this has stuck with me forever, where he's like, your body has all the answers. We just need to ask it the right questions. And it goes back to this, that if you are not looking at this as bile and looking into the liver and looking at all of this as a possibility, could you be missing something that I don't want to say is a simple fix, but is on the way to a fix to something better and feeling better? So I'm like, oh, well, now I have a list of questions for my next visit of things that I want to talk about, because no one has ever brought that up before, ever. I got diagnosed back in 2014, and I have never spoken to a physician about this ever.
Yeah.
And
So
that's disheartening.
it is very disheartening. Again, GI doctors are working within their scope, what they've been trained
Yeah.
upon. Actually
Yeah.
had Dr. Pedre on. I just love him. He's so funny. I met him in Miami, like, after we podcasted together, and then I did an
Hmm.
Instagram live with him. He's just hilarious, but he said something that shook me, when we interviewed him. He said, "I left conventional medicine because of one thing." He said, "When I graduated, I was handed a sheet of paper. It said diagnosis, prescription. Left side of the paper, diagnosis, right side, prescription. That is how our healthcare system works." And I could put my tinfoil hat on. We could talk all day about this. I don't think anybody is second guessing anymore. COVID woke us up a
No.
lot. Nope. Right. And so I don't fault them, because I truly think that some of them are individuals that want to help. Right. I know so many good GI doctors. I have
Yeah.
is where people are telling me, my GI doctors asked for your information. They want to know how we cured this colitis. They want to know, what we've done, and they want
Hmm.
to refer patients to you, whatever. All that's great. But what we do in functional medicine takes a lot of, work and intention and time. And some individuals want a prescription, right? And so you have to really think about the person sitting in front of you as to how we can support them, how we can explain things to them, and then also, right, what's in the financial means of things. Because sadly, right now,
Yeah.
at least functional medicine is out of pocket. But this is a large area where I truly feel that GI, gastroenterology, has a big opportunity to improve upon. And so, again, that's really where my heart comes in to want to write this book and help people understand in a way that then they can just go and take action if they're buying a $20 book. I
Yeah.
have a on my I'll give you 3 resources. So on my Poop Queen account, you can comment liver or gallbladder anywhere, and I got just like a blog. Yesterday, I
Hmm.
launched a fatty liver guide. That's a lot of information. There's a ton of stuff in terms of helping people understand this epidemic that we have, because about 40%, and that's what's reported. I would say that it's closer to probably to 60% of Americans have
Wow.
some level of fatty liver because of this gut liver connection that,
Hmm.
they're not looking at. And then I also have in our Fit Mom Society, we just did a 5-day lab series called Labs Decoded. And what we did
Hmm.
is we broke down every portion of the panel that we run. That is more comprehensive, but you can go through day by day your CBC, your CMP, your lipid panel, hormone panel, and understand what is optimal compared to normal, because there are patterns and there are trends. And so if you're out of range of the optimal, what does that indicate? What are we starting to see? And so we taught it over 5 days, a lunch and learn series that you can get in that Fit Mom Society group. It's a 7-day free trial, and then it's a monthly subscription, cancel anytime. And that would help you start to look at clues. And on the digestive side, there's clues for, yes, underlying bacterial or viral infections, dysbiosis, inflammation. There's lot of malnourishment and insufficiency. So if it's low stomach acid markers, right? Like looking at, hey, maybe this is more of a pernicious anemia or anemia. So what's our digestive capacity and where's that being impaired? Of course, I'm always going to say, especially in the case of gastroparesis, have we done stool testing to look at the health of the terrain? Conventional
Hmm.
medicine doesn't always accept our functional stool test. Sometimes they do. I have a girl last week that I met with. I referred her into her GI doctor. I said, take this with you because there's some very important things here that your doctor needs to look at in terms of how
Yeah.
we're going to move forward. And to be transparent, I said this could potentially be Crohn's or colon cancer. We need to get eyes, right? So we need both. We need functional and we need conventional because conventional is going to do all of the scopes and the health of the tissue. And then sometimes prescriptions are warranted. But in a lot of the cases that I work with, even chronic complex cases with IBD, Crohn's, colitis, gastritis, we can look at the health of the terrain, what bacteria are in imbalance. And if we bring that back into a good balance that supports the immune system, that calms down inflammation, we can restore some of these signaling pathways that have to happen for that orchestra and symphony to work well together. So, again, going back
Yeah.
to what I said earlier, gastroparesis is a very real thing, but if we look at the true gastroparesis, it's like 1 to 2%, whereas
Mhm.
in most cases, it's an overlooked dysbiosis and that driving inflammation and a gut-liver connection that just hasn't been investigated. And so I don't fault
Yeah.
them in conventional medicine, right? They're working within their constraints. But we have to also make people aware that there is hope. We don't have to live this way. And if we can look at all 11 systems of the body, we can look at our labs from an optimal lens, not normal, because you hit the nail on the head. I wanted to be happy my labs were normal. Girlfriend, I was told my labs were normal for a decade.
Mhm.
Symptoms matter more
Yeah.
than labs.
Yeah, I like it's when you are talking to somebody and you're like, "Man, I really wish that like something was wrong on my labs." It's not because like somebody who's never had a health issue, right? Or had very limited health issues are like, "What do you mean you want something to be wrong?" And it's not that you want something to be wrong, but you want an answer as to why you have these certain symptoms. Like I have no thyroid. I had my thyroid removed oh gosh, 13 years ago now. And I have struggled with my thyroid levels because of absorption issues for years, very, very long time. And I tend to have more like higher levels of TSH than anything else. And those were one of the labs I had done. I'm sitting here like the gravity is so heavy. I'm so fatigued. I don't want to see what my TSH is. For the first time in probably 4 years, I was in a normal range. And I'm sitting here like, damn it. Like that isn't even an answer. So now what's the answer? But to flip that, I finally was like, well, maybe they'll stop blaming my TSH levels on my fatigue and maybe they'll start digging somewhere else. Because if this isn't the obvious answer or it isn't the thing that's just staring you in the face, maybe they'll finally start to dig into other areas and finally start saying, like, okay, you've been saying for years that you feel like something is missing, that there's a puzzle piece. The whole thing is there, but that one piece is missing in the middle of the dang picture, and nobody has
So
found it.
let's go
I'm
back
like,
here.
maybe this will be the start of it.
Yeah. Let's go back here and look at the timeline. So you said, if I'm correct, that you were diagnosed 13 years ago, which would have been 2013,
Mhm.
2026. Yeah. You were diagnosed with gastroparesis in 2014.
I blame my thyroid. So one of, the medication that I was on, one of them I was allergic to. So obviously can't continue to take that to treat the thyroid levels. The other medication that I was on, I kept needing higher and higher and higher doses until it got to a dangerous point to try to control the thyroid. Something what you said earlier in the episode, like if I could go back to where, back then and teach myself something or tell myself something, what I know now, I would have tried a lot harder and pushed off surgery a lot longer if I knew now what I could have taught myself back then. And it's, I opted for surgery over the radioactive iodine because one of the questions I had was, can you confirm to me that it's only going to touch my thyroid and nowhere else in my body? With the iodine, they couldn't confirm that. And I'm like, I'm not comfortable with that. I want to protect my other organs, especially my reproductive organs. I don't want to do that. So I opted for the surgery. And I also didn't realize what hypoparathyroidism could actually do to the body because I'm one of the 1 to 2% of people that come out of surgery with that, and I've had it since then. So to not dig into my whole story, because then we'll be here for about 5-6 hours talking about it, but that to me, that really started a real snowball effect of my entire like chronic illness journey, where I had had trouble prior to that, but that was the catalyst for me that pushed everything else forward, because I think it's my gastroparesis, I believe, is connected to that surgery, and also to the very uncontrolled levels of my thyroid hormones that I haven't really been able to control since then.
Right.
Sometimes, but not
Yeah.
always.
Yeah. And so just a couple things I'll say on this is number one, I've had clients that have had their thyroid removed because of cancer. And it's a fine balance, it's a delicate dance and a fine balance that you have to constantly be refining. So going back to understanding TSH, our optimal range is 1 to 2, right?
Mhm,
Conventional medicine has a range that goes up to 4.5. The higher that you go, the slower that you are. The lower that you
mhm.
go, the faster that you are, right? So think of it as a gas pedal and a brake. But that's a pituitary hormone. Why are we checking TSH, which is calling on the thyroid to produce hormone when we don't have a thyroid?
Yeah.
I mean,
You're
it's just a
asking questions I've asked for a long time and
yeah,
never gotten
and
an
so it's
answer
like, does
to.
it make sense here? The other thing on the iodine piece, because I do a lot with iodine therapy more on the conservative side, but we actually look at iodine deficiency as a root cause
Mhm,
for growths, abnormal growths in the body. So that could be cyst, breast or fibroids, uterine cysts, all those types of things. Many times we're seeing that in situations where iodine is deficient. And what happens at
mm,
the thyroid level is that we compete with some of these other things in our environment, such as fluoride and bromelain. And when you're going through and you're looking at someone's T4, which is your inactive thyroid hormone, it requires iodine majorly, but also selenium, zinc, and magnesium. Um, so again, case by case, everybody is so different. So it's not that, it's your fault or anything like that, but it is maybe the doctors could have investigated different ways or looked further and to understand what's going on here because now it's probably left you in the situation where it is contributing. We don't know,
mhm.
100%. But getting that regulated and getting your free T3. I have a reel that I did over Christmas where I literally made a cheer and I did it as looking like I'm cheering. Free T3, 3.3. But guess what? They don't run on your thyroid panel.
Mhm. You have to ask for it.
Yeah, you have to fight for it. You don't ask for it, you fight for it. That's your active
Yeah.
thyroid hormone. I went through that and battled with them for years. And here's the thing, my stuff all came down to Hashimoto's, and it was active autoimmune attack on my thyroid while my levels were still normal. That happens all the time. We see it clinically where people have positive antibodies, but their TSH is normal, their T4, their T3, all normal. So just knowing that for women listening to this, just continue to advocate for yourself. And again, if you've got
Yeah.
a doctor that won't, listen to you or isn't giving you alternatives or isn't really helping you dig in, then again, you ask them to document that and then maybe move on to a different one. But yeah, so okay, in your situation, if I had to guess, this is more of an imbalance of things that can be supported if we can start to replace what's been lost because that's where we're at, right? It's just like if anybody takes their gallbladder out, now we have to replace what the gallbladder does and support that with bile salt, ox bile, taurine, choline, TUDCA, whatever that person individually may need, and then continue to monitor those symptoms and look further, right? At the labs, but more in that optimal lens. So definitely, fitmomsociety.com, go through that. I think you would geek out on it in terms of what we talk about you
Yeah.
know? Because again, yeah, your fatigue can come from so many other places, and if you're not
Yeah.
absorbing your nutrients, that just makes things worse, from not just the gut perspective, but that whole body fatigue, malaise, just gosh, like, I just don't feel like I have a drive, and I
Yeah.
think women struggle with that if we were really to slow down, like, to be honest, most of us would say, "Okay, if I had
Yeah.
3 hours, between now and pickup time for kids, and I had nothing to do and no responsibilities, I'm taking a nap," you know?
Yeah. 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 And, it's talking about like the other things that maybe they don't generally look at, like even the thyroid levels, and I didn't understand and didn't even know that I think the highest TSH I ever had that I can remember was 40 something. And I was pretty dang miserable at that point. And, you don't necessarily think about or put that connection together until after that the constipation was worse, my motility was worse, the fatigue was worse, the brain fog was worse, all of these things that are worse. And then as you start to normalize to what is like my optimal, at this point, I don't even know what my optimal is because I haven't seen it in years, right? So as I'm trying to get back there, but as like the fog lifts a little bit, as things start to settle, you're like, oh, I didn't realize that's why it was worse. Like no amount of Miralax was helping with the constipation because my thyroid labs were so terrible at that point and everything was so much slower. So, with all of these other connections and all of these other things that really can affect the motility and affect the constipation and affect your gut microbiome and SIBO and all of these different things, it's like, where do you look? What do you do? And if they're not part of the general conversation, if we're not educated going into the appointment, if we're not educated in the appointment, so many things I feel like are just constantly missed and we're just left feeling so defeated and on our own. And, I'm so grateful that there are people like you out there that not just doing it behind closed doors with clients and helping people, but also being out there publicly, talking about these things to even if it's just a small thing to say, hey, you know, go have this test done if you have this, or this is what I would ask my doctor to do if I was in your situation, or here's a research paper on X, Y, or Z, right? Somebody sees that and they're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Let me talk about that. Let me do some research. Let me bring this up in my next appointment. Maybe it fits for you, maybe it doesn't, but you guys are all of the providers, all of the experts out there are doing so much amazing work for patient populations like ours because you don't know what you don't know. And the best way that we're finding, in just from my personal experience, are, what we see in our community here is like, we're learning from other patients. We're learning from other providers. We're learning from people talking about these things on the internet because nobody else is talking about it. So we're having these conversations. And it's really, truly, if we haven't said thank you for all of the things that you share because it's so educating. It's so helpful going forward. And it's just, I think you're impacting more of us than you realize because of all of the things that you are putting out there. So if I haven't said it enough, thank you for all of that.
Yeah, and I mean, you inspire me to get louder, in terms of this topic specifically, right? Like,
Yeah.
and get louder about helping women advocate for themselves because, yeah, you nailed it. You don't know what you don't know when you don't know it, right?
Yeah.
The last interview that I had earlier, he was asking me, "What would you say to yourself as that 14-year-old girl?" And I'm like, "Wow, such a great question." That there's so much, right? I'd go back,
Yeah.
say, and do, and what I actually answered that to start, and I'll say this to you as well as everybody listening, it's not your fault. You
Yeah.
don't know what you don't know. You're putting your trust in people that we're supposed to be able to trust and think that they have our best interest in mind. And it's really discouraging and heartbreaking, actually, to find out that, no, they don't really have our best interest in mind, as a whole. Some definitely
Mhm.
do. Will advocate more for you. But, I'm working with a client right now who she's a nurse and she was told by many doctors, Stanford doctors. I mean, she's gone all over the US seeing specialists, and she was told she was just gonna have her large colon removed, or large intestine, I mean. Okay, how is that gonna leave her with a late way to live? And um, slowly, she's healing. We've saved it. She's having complete bowel movements every day. She's getting, her life
Wow.
back. And, there will be things that are going to take longer than others, but there is healing. And
Mhm.
what, that doctor said to you before is that we do have it. It's just asking the right question and it's finding the right inputs to get those right signals that we need because everything in the
Yeah.
body, enzymatic signaling and, communication. And so when communication breaks down, everybody knows that doesn't go well for relationship or health.
Anything.
So
Yeah.
anything in life, yeah. So continue to advocate for yourself and I love that you're putting together, a community so that people can share with each other. Sometimes in those communities, it can get a little wild with, seeing so many comments and things and more positive, I hope, than negative. But there is hope. And there is a way that even if we don't totally reverse it, like for me with Hashimoto's and having children's RA, I will always have autoimmune. Like I
Mhm,
can't say that you cure anything, but I'm in remission with negative
mhm.
antibodies, negative symptoms. And I truly believe that can happen for others as well. Does it mean that you get to live life the way that you did before? No, right? We can't live
Hmm.
the way that led us to. Like
Yeah,
I literally shared with him, I'm like 100% what I would have changed. And my mom didn't have the knowledge and the information that we have today at that point in time, right? We're talking 20 some years ago now. I don't think that the hamburger helper, the toaster strudels, the steak and shake, I don't think those things were helping me, with my
yeah,
issue. So I think that there was a lot from an input perspective that could be supported. And that's still true today for people, whether that is the
yeah.
quality of food, the types of food, and also just how we do it. And the same thing with your mind. So if it's podcasts that are uplifting and encouraging and you feel good, continue listening to them. If it's music that makes you feel happy, continue listening to that. If it's friends that uplift you and encourage you and support you, continue those friendships. If it's anything else, then you got to go back and you got to set those boundaries and you got to get rid of all of the things that just don't serve you because it'll keep you stuck in that loop and that doesn't support
Yeah,
the mindset, right? So it's all this
yeah,
holistic, interconnected body and
yeah,
mind.
and I think yeah, and that's something depending on who you talk to will depend on the support that you get in doing kind of marrying both of those things together, right? To say that there's time and space for functional medicine, there's time and space for conventional medicine. I am a firm believer that you need both. And I know that from my own experience and knowing like practitioner that I saw years ago when it was after I had had my thyroid out. I remember after a couple months of going, I'm like, I wish I had gotten here before I made the choice for surgery because I don't know that I might have made the same choice, I might have ended up in this exact same position, but I feel like I would have been more educated, I would have been a little bit stronger, and there was the possibility that there could have been some additional healing that maybe kept me from needing that. Maybe not, and I try not to dwell on that too much because that doesn't help anyone. You can't go back and change it. But I think about that where, you know, being oh gosh, I was fresh out of college when I got sick, and I didn't know anything. I'd never been sick before. I didn't know what I was experiencing. And all of a sudden, the world that I thought was at my fingertips came crashing down around me. And it's like now I ask questions, I look at different things, I try to find my own connections to people smarter than me, people that are doing these other things, and finding ways to heal myself in any way that is safe and that will work for me. I didn't know that back then. So the more that we share this now and the more that people like you are out there, talking about advocacy, education, support, all of those things, I'm hoping as things continue on in the world, because we'll never cure it all, but we could give people more chances to not just be out there like dragging your feet with the heavy, heavy like cinder blocks that you're strapped to and, just feeling so miserable and only surviving that we can help you thrive a little bit. And that's, something that I see start to change. I think the tides are starting to change a little bit. So I'm like, I want to hop on that and just keep pushing that message forward.
Yes. Well, thank you for what you're doing because so many people need to hear it and it always lands and resonates well with individuals who walked that journey and walked that path
Yeah.
because it's a lot more relatable, right?
Yeah.
Like if I told somebody how to lose weight and I hadn't lost 60 pounds but struggled and battled with it for years,
Hmm.
who's gonna I mean, why do I wanna listen? I remember when I was really struggling and, overweight, and you can see all these trainers online, these little girls that have never struggled with anything, and it's like, that's not who I'm hiring to help me. Like, I'm hiring the girl who struggled and she's been in the trenches, And
Yeah.
so that's the thing for you as well is, just continue to shine your light and continue to bring the 2 worlds together because, yes, I agree with you, we definitely need both, and when we can help people find that balance then we can, help people improve. And also, do better for the generations to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I really am just so grateful and thank you for your time today and just everything. I know we definitely went off course a little bit, but those I feel like those are some of the best conversations that I have because it's where the passion comes out from whoever I'm talking to and with myself that it's like you see what really matters and what you really want to put into the world when we go off the rails ever so slightly. So thank you so much because I know how busy you are right now, and I just really appreciate it, and I know our community will too.
So you're so welcome.